What is up, you guys? Hey, we've got another episode of The Standard coming to you. This time we're talking to somebody you may recognize. He is somebody that I call a very close friend. He's somebody that I've actually called my spirit animal. He is somebody that has been a great influence in my life, and I am truly thankful and appreciative that we've been able to start this friendship and this partnership with everything that we do and we collaborate with. So truly excited about this next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Without further ado, let me introduce Joe Lewis, aka the Respiratory Coach. All right, you guys, so we've got another chat coming to you guys. We've got Joe Lewis. Most of you guys probably know him as Respiratory Coach. You've seen him on YouTube and all the socials. Lots of hits coming out of this guy right here. So sometimes we get together and we have some conversations that you can see throughout the week, but definitely somebody that I'm proud to say that I know, and looking forward to picking his brain a little bit. So Coach, take it away. Let us know kind of a little bit about you, a little bit about your background and where you're at now.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks JJ for inviting me on this session. I'm always appreciative. I got started in RT, just fumbled into the schooling of it back in 1999. Graduated in 2001. Worked for about 10 years in the adult critical care setting, and then ultimately transitioned into the world of education, where I had no idea what I was getting into, but ultimately ended up falling in love with it. And now that's what I do all the time. Even when I'm not actually working with my direct students, I'm usually probably trying to record something to post on YouTube to just share the knowledge for the betterment of the future. And I think that's where my love has fallen into now, is that right there. It's just what did I not know in my first 10 years that I think is important for students now to learn and to know within their first 2 to 3 to 4 years. Can I offer that to them? And if so, then that's what I try to do.
And I think that's really important stuff right there. You're looking at the future. You're not necessarily saying, hey, right now this is what we need, right? You're trying to instill some vision into those that are going to be in this profession for the next 20, 25 years, 30 years. And
Right.
I think that's definitely commendable. Tell us about your early days as a respiratory therapist. You said you kind of fumbled into it. What did that really look like?
Yeah. So I was trying to figure, young, right out of high school, trying to figure out your way. I had no idea what I was going to do, what I wanted to be. I felt fairly confident in who I was, but I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was actually looking into social work, and I was like, I think I'm gonna be a social worker. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And I found myself at my girlfriend's house with her parents and a couple of their friends on a Wednesday night. And I remember the guy that was there. He said, "Hey, have you ever thought about respiratory therapy?" And I was like, "Wow, I don't even know what that is. What is that? Like the next closest thing to a doctor?" I remember saying that. I told my mom that. I was like, I think it's like the next closest thing to a doctor. She was like, "Probably not, Joe, but okay." And I was like, "Okay." So, this conversation progresses. And I think back in the day, it's really weird for me to think back to the year of 1999 and think like that was back in the day. But really, realistically, back in the day, you could just say on a Wednesday night, "Well, what is it? Tell me more about it." And the conversation proceeds to say, "Well, my sister just so happens to also be a respiratory therapist, and she works in the pediatric intensive care at the local hospital, and she's on shift tomorrow night. Do you want to go follow her and see what she does?" And I said, "Yeah." And I did it. And I'll never forget the feeling of walking into that arena. I was probably highly either underdressed or inappropriately dressed. But I didn't know. I just went in there, and I had never been in a hospital before, at least to my knowledge, I hadn't. And I went in there and I just watched this person take care of these children. And the whole setting just felt right. This was on a Thursday night. So I leave that little 2-3 hour shadowing, however long it lasted. And on Friday, I went to Amarillo College and filled out the application, took it to my soon-to-be Professor Neil Allen. And by the end of business day on Friday, I had been notified that I was awarded the 24th spot of 24 places. And if that wouldn't happen, who knows where I'd be right now? Like, I don't even know where I'd be right now. Like, if I wouldn't have got into that program at that time, would I have gone and applied at another one? I don't even know. I just know that everything happens for a reason, and that those sequence of 3 days served a purpose. And here I am now.
It's so funny. We've said it, multiple times before, that there's a bigger plan than our own.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
And that just plays right into that whole narrative right there. And that's so cool because, I don't know how many other people have a similar story, not knowing anything about respiratory whenever they actually get into the program.
Right.
But then whenever they get into it or they see it for the first time, it's like, oh, that fits,
Yeah.
I don't remember the first time I put on a baseball glove, but whenever I put it on for the, multiple times, it's like, oh, that fits,
Yeah.
so you just kind of get into that mode.
Yeah.
One of the other things that people like to know, especially just people who want to know how to get to the level that you've gotten to, right? And I mean that by having the impact and the influence across, not only your local area, but you're seeing, your impact nation and globally, right?
Yeah.
So did you have any mentors or anybody like that kind of contributed to the makeup of who Respiratory Coach or Joe Louis is today?
It's funny you ask this because I don't think I can. Well, here's what I can do. I can say yes 100%. But in the term of mentor, I can't say that these people know what they did for me. So it's not like an established contract or understanding like, hey, you're my mentor, and I worked from there. And it was definitely nothing like that. But I can tell you there's a guy by the name of Tim May, and he was a registered respiratory therapist when I graduated, throughout my schooling, and then into my postgraduate initial work. And this guy, I remember he would walk in the room and he was so chill. And I remember being a nervous wreck. I was like, I'm trying to figure all this out. I'm now graduated. I'm now, at the bedside with a ventilator that's alarming, and I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. And it's like, here comes Tim. And he always walked in with a cup of coffee. It didn't matter if it was 8 a.m. in the morning or 1 p.m. in the afternoon. He had a cup of coffee. He'd just walk in and he'd just look. And he would go, you need to do this. And I was like, God, he's so good. And he's so cool.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to be as good as he was. I'll never forget the day he came up behind me. I didn't even know he was in the room, but we had a patient that wasn't doing good. He comes up behind me, and I'm looking at the monitor, right? You know how we all get. We're looking at the monitor. And he comes up behind me, and I don't even know he's in the room, and I just hear this voice over my shoulder. It says, look at your patient.
Yeah.
And I said, wow. Like, here I am stuck on these numbers up on this monitor. And where I should have been this entire time is looking at the patient. And he's definitely by far probably the most influential respiratory therapy, bedside respiratory therapist that I've ever worked with. Now, beyond that, there's several more that I don't even have the time to name. I figured out pretty early in the game there's going to be some really good people that I'm going to get to see work, and some really bad examples of the job. So fairly early in the game, I realized, like, you know what, I'm going to nitpick from each of the best. Like, this person does this really good and I like that. This person does this really good and I like that. This person. And I started becoming what I like to refer to as a transformer of all of these RTs. I started just grabbing everything to good. And I think if you were to look at my practice today, you could probably label each of the things I do. I like to think I'm a decent respiratory therapist, and you could label like that belongs to this RT, that belongs to this RT. So in a sense, yeah, I had mentors, and they taught me a lot of the details of my game today. And once I got into education, 100%, I had people that showed me effective teaching. How do you teach effectively? How to use multiple words to say the same thing to drive a point home. 100%, whether they were stated or not. And I think that's the key point I want to point out here is that you never know when you're mentoring somebody. It doesn't have to be an established contract. Like, will you be my mentor? That probably is rarely going to happen. But the potential to mentor everybody around you is always on the table.
I love that. You never know when you're mentoring somebody.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that. Love that. So you talked about that wow moment, right? When Tim was kind of standing over you. Would you say that's kind of when everything started to click for you, or was there a different moment?
Well, I mean, that was definitely a clicking moment for me. I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
was the moment. I think I was out of the field for about 3 to 4 years. I don't remember the exact date and how many years it had been, but I do remember distinctly walking up to a room. It was probably closer to the 4-year mark after graduation. I walked to a room. I had gotten called stats to that room, and I went to walk in. The door was closed, and I went to open that door, and I remember feeling like I'm ready for whatever's on the other side of it. That was the first time I'd ever felt like that. Before, I would be nervous. I'd be walking up to the room like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen? What am I going to have to do? I didn't know. But I remember the time I stepped into a room with pure confidence in what was about to happen. It didn't matter what it was. I was ready to be there. And and yeah, that I remember that moment. That was the moment when things shifted for me.
Right. Right. So you and I met through our master's program.
Yep.
I mean, we're knocking on the door at 1 year here. I don't know exactly the date, but
Yeah, pretty close.
we're pretty close. We're around that time,
Yeah.
and for the longest time, really immediately after I graduated my associate's program, I only wanted to stay a CRT at the
Yeah.
time, and I stayed that way for a year. And unless the hospital that I worked for didn't have a mandate or a requirement for us to become RRT within a year, I probably would have stayed on that train, right?
Right.
And knowing that I've kind of outgrown that mindset. I pursued my bachelor's. Both of us were in our master's program. What were the contributing factors, or what was instilled in you to go pursue that higher education, and how has that contributed to your professional career?
Well, first of all, JJ, let's not sell yourself short. We were in the master's program together, but you got your master's. Like, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't have to tiptoe around that. You graduated, and I'm so proud of you for that. Man, I don't know. I'm probably not the best person for this topic. I'm going to speak about my master's here in just a second, but I feel like every degree I have ever obtained has been for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, my dad, I come from a family without a college graduate. So graduating college was important to me. Graduating from a bachelor's degree was important, so important to my mom to
Mm-hmm.
have a bachelor's degree, graduate, from her children. So I got my associate's degree, and I knew that wasn't the end of the road. So a few years later, graduated in 2001. A few years later, 2004 rolls around, I pursue a bachelor's degree. Now, I did not pursue a bachelor's degree in respiratory care because at that time there was a whole lot of, first of all, there wasn't a whole lot of bachelor's degrees available. Second of all, there wasn't, a whole lot of certainty that a bachelor's in respiratory care was going to be beneficial. So the last thing at that point in time I wanted to do was drive myself in a corner with the degree that I was like, well, what do I do with this now? Like if I want to go. So I pursued the bachelor's of applied science. Okay. I did not go get a bachelor's in respiratory care. If I could do it now, I'd probably just go get I'd probably bridge into a respiratory care program because we're seeing opportunities that exist now. And then I went a long time with not even considering a master's degree, and then time and people and just they start just chirping at you and they just start talking about it and you just start thinking about it and considering it, and it's like, you know what, why not? And the biggest thing for me was recognizing that there is this proven fact that your children typically, based off of research, will obtain 1 degree higher than what you obtain.
Mm-hmm.
That's a motivating factor for people with children. And so for me, I look at it and I go, just go get your master's degree. And also the idea that I do see and value the idea of moving towards a bachelor's degree program. Now, there are plenty of people out there working in an associate's degree right now that will retire before this ever comes to fruition. I don't think I'm one of those. So if I want to stay relevant in the game of education at the higher level, then I got to put the bachelor's degree into play for me and what I'm available to teach just based off of degrees and credentials, right? And so I sought out this master's degree, and I'll tell you, my number one motivation behind it is the example I'm setting for my kids, because I talk to them about hard work in school. Take care of your schoolwork, take care of it, to keep your grades up, do your things, right? And now they're getting to hear me say that while I'm at the computer typing on my own homework. So we're living the life together, and I'm really cherishing that. It really means a lot to me. And so that's a big driving factor. But beyond that, I think it comes down to the fact that you get to a point to where you recognize that progression, whether you like it or not, is rooted in degrees. And our entire profession, this entire trade that we're involved in, being respiratory care, is indeed going to either move towards a state of progression into this realm of bachelor's degree and master's degrees, or it's going to get stuck back in the associate's degree. And not that that is a problem, but the reality of it is that the associate's degree has 21 months to teach you the bare minimum foundation respiratory care education. We do not have the time to get into research, to get into core leadership concepts, to get into deeper, new, emerging technologies. You look at it, the 21 months is filled to the brim with necessary content to help you pass the TMC. Where does that lead us? It leads us to the next level. And so I see the future being in the higher levels of education, the bachelor's degree, the master's degree. I've learned so much related to research, something that I never even thought I was interested in. And if we go back to when me and you first met, we probably had these conversations. I was like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't know if I really value it yet, because let's face it, I didn't know what I was doing. And through this program, I have learned how to look at research, how to grade research, how to read a study and to value the results of that study. And there's no way that can't be important. And so it's something I'm going to encourage everybody from now on to do forever. Don't stop.
Absolutely. And another friend of mine that I had the pleasure of talking to earlier this week, he was talking about how when he first graduated, and one of his graduates, they graduated and went into the exact same department,
Yeah.
right? And he was saying how she would bring her books and study, during any downtime, and the her dedication to her studies led her to be what he called a rock star, and somebody that the team leaned on as a result of her continuing to put in the work into those books. So I totally agree with you. Just continue to study. There's no time for the books to just go to the side and to
Right.
have like a book fire. That's not anything that I would advocate for now. You talked to me 10 years ago, I may have had a different mindset, but now, you grow, you mature, and you learn, right? Um, I want to talk about one thing that you said during um, that last question. Is you talked about a number of people just kind of influencing you or talking you about the benefits of being in a graduate level degree, right, for respiratory therapy.
Right.
And about a year ago, I did a presentation on leadership, right? And I asked you if you would give us 2 bullet points, right? And one of those 2 bullet points you gave us was the importance of your circle, right? So can you just talk about the importance of having that influential and that positive influence of your circle a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got two choices. You can spend your day talking about the latest, best Bachelorette series or Bachelor series or Big Brother or American Ninja Warrior or whatever you want to talk about, the Super Bowl, the whatever. Or
Right.
you can pick the phone up and you can find yourself just submerged in a conversation about respiratory therapy that goes from one question to the next, to the next, to the next. And next thing you know, your mind is opened up to an entirely new world of thoughts and possibilities on top of that. And you find yourself, well, for me personally, this has been a journey that I've been on for a while, but I remember when it happened, when this clicked for me. I remember I fell in love with the profession. I don't know if I was in love with the profession my first 10 years of it. I was doing it. It was paying my bills. I was taking care of patients. There was a point in there when I fell in love with patient care. But man, just when you can get people around you that stimulate your mind in the area of what your life and your livelihood is, and you realize that there's so many shortcomings, and these conversations just breed progression, and you find yourself just having this when you have to turn it off, that's when you know you're there. When you have to say, I got to turn it off right now.
Yeah.
Because for me, I could live my entire life 16 hours a day with something RT related in front of me, talking to you,
Hmm.
talking to other people in my circle, A or C journal in front of me, internet, PubMed, whatever it is. I could live that 16 hours a day, but I can't. I have a family, I have kids, I've got, other responsibilities, but I have to turn it off. And when you have to turn it off, that's when you know you're in love with what you're doing. It doesn't even feel like work.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I ever work. I
I
don't
love
feel
that.
like I'm working every single day, minute up to minute down, until I shut it down intentionally. But in reality, I never feel like I'm working.
Right.
And I think that's the power of your circle, because I have a circle around me that breeds this energy.
Now, with that circle that we're talking about, how did your circle form?
Well, there's several different ways. One way is intentional. You find the people that look like you and look not physically, but look like your mindset, you know?
Okay.
And I remember the day where I sat back and I said, you know what? I'm gonna start building a little army here, and I'm gonna bring together a whole bunch of like-minded individuals one of these days. I don't know when that's gonna be. It still hasn't even happened yet, but it's definitely in the works, and the army is definitely growing. And it's just, you just find them and you see them and you start creating connections with them and you start talking to them. And then sometimes somebody like yourself just falls in your lap and you're like, whoa, like I didn't see this coming. I didn't know who JJ Valdez was. I didn't reach out to you. We just happened to run into each other in class one day, and it was like, you actually started all this. You're the one who sent me the message that said, hey man, I feel like we need to talk. And we started talking and haven't stopped since then. And same thing with Teresa. I didn't know, I didn't know Teresa was Teresa. I didn't even know she existed in this world until she got a job at the place of our employment as an adjunct instructor. And I went, I like this person. I like the way she thinks. I can see there was an instant connection. Like we can have some conversations. And you start having those conversations. And I remember the early conversations, they're way different than now because it took some time. You had to build the trust. She had to recognize that I'm just not out here just talking crazy. Like I'm serious in what we're talking about here. Like we're talking about the future of what we love. And when you find those people that love it, it's very obvious. You can tell it. Like you can tell the people who are like, I don't want to talk about RT. And then you find the people that are like, ask me a question. What do you want to talk about? What do you think about this? And if anybody ever asks me a question, what do you think about this? Oh, you're in my army. You're in my army.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So you've talked about kind of your time as a clinician. You talked about a little bit about your time as an educator and how you want to impact and influence, what you say, the kindergartners, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that you really want to impact. Now, one of the things that we really hadn't talked about yet is some of these professional organizations, right? We talk about the big one, AARC. We're both in Texas, TSRC. There's now an affiliation with another organization with the Respiratory Care Foundation of Texas, right? So just talk a little bit about your participation in the professional organizations and what you've learned being a part of them.
Yeah. So first of all, let's just get this right out there, right out the gate. Let's just go out like this. A lot of people want to talk about their frustrations with the different organizations. I have mine. I want to address one specifically though. I hear a lot of RTs on social media and different things when there's these forums start, they want to talk about how the AARC doesn't do much. I just want to say that I have found that the AARC actually has a lot of benefits. You just have to go find them. You have to get yourself into what they're doing. And when you do that, the benefits come to life for you and you go, oh, I see it now. They put out a journal every month. They also will give you a free CEU if you'll read that journal and answer some questions over the journal. It's a free CEU.
Right.
And the journal is rooted in evidence. So it's not a complete waste of time because you're learning evidence-based medicine at the same time while continuing education and diving deeper into your craft, into some things that you don't even know you're interested in until you read one of those articles and you go, whoa, I didn't even know that would excite me,
Yeah.
And then it does. But I think more importantly, just getting involved with these organizations for me, it just fuels your fire to want to be dedicated to the craft. It wants you to be better. It gives you a purpose to work towards the future. And that's what we all got to recognize, first of all, is it's all on us to push it forward. Because it's not going to stop with us. We're all going to retire at some point. The profession's not stopping. So we have an obligation to pave the way for the next people, just like the previous people paved our way. This profession started back in the 40s. Think about the growth from the 40s to the 80s. It was substantial. It was wild. They went from nothing but oxygen jockeys to then aerosolizing medications and then positive pressure with IPV and then mechanical ventilation. And it's on us to carry that into the future. And we need to be active in these organizations. You need to find, and I think when you find a place in an organization, you mentioned the Respiratory Care Foundation of Texas, and I plan on sending out several invitations to therapists that I know are looking for something more, because sometimes we don't find it from our job itself. Sometimes you're looking for that spark, and just whatever the reason being, whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter. It just doesn't always maybe come from your place of employment. Probably multiple reasons why that is. But what if you plug in over here and now you have a purpose outside of your employee obligation? And now you're contributing to the future. And I think it fuels the fire. It's more wood put on the fire, and you become more dedicated to the craft.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we talked about, 3 pretty big ones, right? AARC, TSRC, and RCFT. Is there any other organizations that you're a part of that you wouldn't think that Respiratory Coach would be a part of?
I feel like you're setting me up here.
I'm not setting you. There's no setup.
I feel like I just got set up or something.
No.
Not currently. I can't. I can't. I'm part of the TSRC, Texas State Society of Respiratory Care. Whether I like it or not, I'm a part of the COARC, which is not really an organization but an accrediting body. I am also a part of the Saudi Arabia Society of Respiratory Care, which just so happens to be something that just came across my Instagram feed, and I said, I wonder if they'll let me in. And I sent an application, and they did. So I am a part of the Saudi Arabia Society of Respiratory Care. Looking forward to hopefully maybe finding a way to get involved with that one. I don't know if anybody knows over there who I am or not, but if I can ever weasel my way into a role with that, then I would love to be a part of that, because I see this as a global arena. It's not, we're in our own little geographical place, but the field of respiratory therapy is growing internationally. And despite the fact that not all healthcare systems across the world utilize respiratory therapists, there is still a growing interest in the field from India, from Saudi Arabia, from various places. And again, what's our role going to be? We're going to sit back and tell them just figure it out?
Right.
We're going to make them start at the 1940s? Or are we going to support them in that effort? And like you don't have to start at oxygen. You don't have to start in the 1940s. You can start with what we know right here, and you can go forward from it. So so Saudi Arabia Society of Respiratory Care, I'm a part of it.
That is so cool. And that's what I wanted to get to is the idea that this is not just a territorial thing. This is not just your slice of the world. This is something that is global, and to plant your flag in the respiratory therapy craft and say, hey, I'm here to support you no matter who you are. Right. That is something that I think is definitely needs to be commended for your efforts to just show everybody that it's not just your slice of the world. So hats off, kudos to you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. But let me just say this real quick. I look at this as this. The RT community is one. It's not, we're one community, and we will be stronger if we approach it as one community. We're all brothers and sisters, and I love everybody in this field that's looking to be the best respiratory therapist they can be. So I don't care. Hell, I may apply for the Canadian Society of Respiratory Care before too much longer.
Hey, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So we've talked about kind of your early career. We talked about, your transition into education. A lot of your videos start out with, hey, future respiratory therapist, right? So if you could talk to an entire nation of new graduate respiratory therapists just starting their career, what recommendations would you give them?
Well, the first recommendation is, don't assimilate. because that's going to be exactly what is going to be pressured upon you right out of the gate. You undoubtedly are going to be pressured to assimilate to the real world. And I do that in air quotations because there's this idea that respiratory therapy somehow postgraduate is different than the theories and the didactic material you learned in school. And while there might be variations of it, I don't think it's that vastly different landscape. It's still the same thing. It's still a human on the other side that you learned how to care for from the extreme details of things. And here's what you're going to hear. I'm just going to tell you right now, okay? Somebody's going to tell you one day that you're really smart and you're going to be really good at this, but you got to get better at time management. And what they're telling you is that you got to work harder. You got to cut corners. We need you to be doing 2 or 3 or 4 therapies in the time that it's taking you right now to do one. And the reality of that is that's just false, because that's not quality respiratory care. So what I would, it's really hard to do this because as a student, you're just learning how to mold and fit into the department and not get fired.
Right.
But the day will come where you will recognize that if you will slow down and take care of each and every patient to the full potential, that the entire day gets slower. I remember running through the day like, oh my gosh, how do I get all these therapies done? Like, knocking out 70, 80 treatments in a day. And it was like, the day was so fast paced. And then I remember the day when it all slowed down and it all started to make sense. It's like, I'm just doing what I need to do right now. And this is quality care. This is what a respiratory therapist is. It's not my light went off. Hold on. There we go. But that's what it is. You know what I mean? It hits you like that, just like a ton of bricks. Like, wait, I've been missing the boat all this time, rushing through, trying to get all of these therapies done. And the reality is that the best thing you can do is just take care of each and every patient in the moment that you're with them, one at a time, approach and address their issues, and then go to the next. And when you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do, you are not hesitant to call someone else. So that's point 2. So point 1 is resist the assimilation movement. Number 2 is call for help when you need it. Know somebody you can call. Make those connections. Let the people around you know that you're not going to be harmful to the patients in this hospital because you know your limitations. There's nothing wrong with that. You are not expected to know it all straight out of school. And so trust your knowledge, but also know when that gut feeling says, I feel like I need someone else's help right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
I was listening to a podcast not long ago, and the people in the podcast were talking about Tom Brady,
Yep.
and when he takes the snap, after he's called the play, he knows exactly where everybody should be and where everybody's going to be. So he knows exactly. It doesn't matter what defense you throw at him. He knows exactly where he's going to go with the football. So he didn't know that coming right out of college.
No.
He didn't. Like, there's no way he could have done that as the backup quarterback to Drew Bledsoe.
Right.
But your time and your dedication to the craft will lead you to those moments. So again, you've encouraged it. I want to echo your thoughts and continue to encourage it, that you stay into your studies and you continue to study this craft so that you know what to do every snap, no matter what the defense or these patients throw at you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's big. Sorry about the interruption. I had to plug my computer in.
It's all right. We're good.
All right. All right.
So you talked about the necessity to have to shut it down, or you would continue to just think about what we want to do with this profession as the years progress. When you have those moments when you take a little nap before you've shut it off, right? if you ever take a nap. I don't know. And you close your eyes and you picture the perfect department and you picture the perfect shift. What are one or two bullet points from that vision that you would use if you had the opportunity to build that perfect department or perfect shift?
So two words come to mind. Well, actually three, but two thoughts come to mind. The first one is visibility. I don't remember. I had a guest on did an interview one time, and he said he would burn the department down. And I think that's an interesting concept. And I think it's one that I would probably do, but I wouldn't do it like you just can't come back here. What I would do is focus on visibility. And what I mean by visibility is that I would push all of my RTs to be visible on their floors for the vast majority of their time in the hospital that day. So when they're on shift, you're a part of all of your patients on your floor. Now, if you sometimes you got multiple floors, and that's fine, but be visible on those multiple floors. And the funny thing about this is that I'm not the only person who's ever said this. I've interviewed, like what you're doing now. I've interviewed other people as well. I've had a nurse practitioner and different people say that the last thing they want to do when they come onto the floor is have to look for the RT. We don't want to have to call for the RT, and we have to call them back from the department. I would push for visibility. And in that visibility, the goal would be is that you're constantly engaged with the activities and the care of your patients. So there's no hiding in a department. There's no hiding in a closet. There's no sitting down and engaging in Facebook and Instagram and just useless time. Everything is patient-driven time in the presence of the healthcare team, whether it be doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs, nurses. You're collaborating with these people all the time. And would that be exhausting? Yes. But do we get paid 12 hours a shift to only work 3 of them? No.
Right.
We're there for 12 hours. So in my opinion, I think we should be paid very well to work extensively for 12 hours and not disappear for 4, 5, or 6 of those hours. So that would be the first thing, be visibility. The second thing would be patient outcomes. That would be words visible in the department. And when I say patient outcomes, I mean there would be this drive that conversations. I would ideally have a council that was driven by finding new ways to impact patient outcomes. And all of that would be just continual improvement of the work we do as a program. I mean, as a department, not a program, a department, right? Impacting the patients we serve. And when my staff got the ventilator days down to the average vent day down to 2.1 days, I would ask them, how do we get it down to 1.7? When we got our trachs decannulated at 8 days after initial tracheostomy, I would say, how do we get it down to 7? It would be a nonstop effort and improvement in constantly looking into the data and the research that's coming out that is intended to support patient outcomes, to make sure that what we are doing is the very best for our patients. And you would not want to work in my department if you wanted to talk about the Super Bowl, if you wanted to talk about the Bachelor or the Bachelorette or whatever else. Because when I stumbled across that conversation, I would ask, what are y'all talking about? And if it wasn't patient outcome based or respiratory therapy based in general, I would probably have a problem with that conversation. Not that I would, not slapping anybody's wrist or anything, but the culture would be one that when you are on this clock, we are seeking betterment for our patients.
Yeah, and I think that's a big word right there, is culture, right? And identifying that there's a culture with patient outcomes as one of the values of the culture. So you just want to instill
Right.
that mindset into the employees or the staff, so that they're ultimately seeking the same thing, and that's better or improved outcomes for the patients. Because
Right.
like it or not, that's who we're there for.
Yeah.
That's what we're there for. That's why we're there, right? Is to take
Yeah.
care of those folks. So um, I,
Let,
I I I
let me
really
throw this out here real
appreciate.
quick. My
Sure.
my just real quick. I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt, but I just want to add on to that real quick here. When I think about a department, that if I could lead a department, it would make me nothing happier that when the state society put on a conference, that I went to that conference, and 50% of the speakers were the staff from the hospital that I'm associated with. Like that would
Right.
make me that would be the pinnacle. It's like, look at this. We've got experts on the stage, and 50 to 60 to 70% of the speakers on this entire agenda come from this and our facility. That's
Right.
the masterminds you want at your place.
Yes, that's the people that you want treating and caring for the patients
Yes.
at the bedside.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Joe, I truly enjoyed this. There was a lot of lots of different topics that we covered, just starting out with your early journey, talking about your time in education, leadership circles, and then moving on to, you know, what you've done or what you appreciate with not only state, national, and international societies, but also what you kind of dream of when before you turn it off, as you say,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this has been a like a true, you know, 360 vision of what you have done in your career to this point. So I truly appreciate your time, and if you have anything else, you can have the floor here.
Well, no, I just want to say thank you, JJ, for inviting me and having me, and it really was fun. You taking me back to some of these early years on where it started and where it is now. It brought it back 360 for myself as well, and I've enjoyed the journey back in time, just rethinking some of these things, because it's we forget about them sometimes. We find out where we are now, and we just tend to focus on that. We forget where we came from, and when you look back to where you've come from to where you are now, you see progress. And that's what I hope to be able to do 40 years from now with our profession, is look back and see progress. So
Absolutely.
yeah, 100%. And so yeah, man, I thank you. I'm appreciative of the opportunity, and maybe we'll have a part two.
Oh, I'd love to have that. Let's shut this down. Let's shut this down just like you shut down all of your videos.
Let's go, man. Average is easy. Don't be it.
Don't be it. See you guys.
See ya.
Wow, what a phenomenal episode, right? I could not get over how many nuggets of information that he kept throwing our way. It was so, so, so good. I'm going to have to watch this one back. If you guys want to reach out to Respiratory Coach, his contact info will be in the description. If you guys want to be a part of one of these conversations, that's all they are. They're simply a conversation. If you guys want to do that, the connection will be down below. The contact information will be down below. Or you can simply wait, and my flow code will come up in the next couple of seconds, and you can scan that. Other than that, I truly hope you guys have a phenomenal day, and go be great.